I'm gonna try something a little new here today. Still gonna record. Okay, we're recording now. We're also going to try live streaming to YouTube, which is fun. Sweet. All right, what's going on? Thanks for joining. My name's Nick. I'm the head of growth at Draftbit, and this is Flexbox Fridays. So what we like to do every Friday is just go over some things that are new in Draftbit, and then take some Q&A. And then if there's time left over, and there usually is, we'll just work on building something together and just make it super fun and interactive. So for starters, why don't I, it's not a ton new this week, but that's okay. One cool thing that is new is this is actually like a pretty big bugaboo of mine, so I'm gonna just show this one off really quick. At the top of your phone, it's actually probably easier to show on my phone. Something called the status bar in React Native, and the status bar is basically the area of your device above the screen in the little notch, for iOS at least, that displays like the time and your Wi-Fi signal and your battery and things like that. And for the longest time in Draftbit, you couldn't change anything about that. And so what ended up happening, I'm going to show you, I'm live previewing this screen phone. In the live preview on the canvas, you can't, this isn't a real device, this is like a web render. But on my phone in live preview, I'm running the screen. And so for the longest time, the top of this, I think the default was just to have the status bar be black or dark. And so this is what the screen looked like. And it's not the worst thing in the world, but like I can't see the screen, the status bar at the top. And so we just enabled the status bar prop on the screen component. So default, I think, is dark, and then you can set it to be explicitly dark, or you can set it to, in this case, light. And like that makes a big difference. That's like we're building for native mobile, so having that prop exposed is like it just does. It's one of those UI things that I think it's a small thing, but it makes a big difference to users. So I actually need to go back and update this example screen to use this new prop, because we do have this example screen in our screen library. But now you can set that explicitly, and it's on a per screen basis. So if you have some screens that are in dark mode and some screens that are in light mode, you can change that prop for each screen. So pretty cool. Let's see what else. Let me look at Slack real quick and see if we're in the middle of our engineering sprint. So this is like, we're halfway through a bunch of things being implemented, and I'm just not 100% positive what else has been deployed yet. Yeah, I don't see a ton else that's been. We fixed a bunch of bugs with account profiles. There were some bugs on the pricing page and the FAQ page. I guess this share page, I guess we had a bug where the author, come on, internet. The author used to say built by a Draftbit user, and now it says built by your actual name. So that's fixed. Oh, this is kind of a big one. I'm going to demo this because this is kind of important. So it used to be that when you added screens to Draftbit, we had a bunch of static screens like this, about screen, this app profile screen, the settings screen, whatever. And when you added or cloned these screens to your project, you were just basically cloning all of the components, and the scope was the screen itself. And that was great for like static front end stuff, but you would still have to hook up your own data to them. So we recently rolled out data enabled screens like these ones, which are nice looking screens, but they're also being fed by real live APIs. And when you clone them to your project, we had to figure out a way to have the data connections, the services of the endpoints travel with that screen, because the screen that we used to only clone the scope of the screen, but the data lives in your app library. And so we needed to basically reach into the app library and bring the data with the screen and then put the data in your new app library. So that was like kind of a non-trivial engineering effort that we implemented. Now, so what used to happen was when you added one of these screens to your app, it was being fed by the live data, but that data wasn't being copied over to your app. And now it is. So now when I add, I'm going to add a couple of screens to my app. Let's test this. I haven't actually tested this. So add, come on. Freaking internet is so slow today. Or maybe it's just being consumed by this live stream. By the way, I hope you guys can hear me. I'm kind of talking, but I never actually confirmed that you can actually hear me. Maybe does this want to work? I don't know. Let's try a different app. Here we go. Okay, so when I add that screen to my app, what should happen now, a couple of things. One, I get brought to the screen, which is nice. You see the data traveled with it. But the service and endpoints also come with it, which is a really important thing when you are, say, cloning your own apps and you just want your data to work when you create, when you duplicate apps. It makes it easier. If I wanted to replace the data that was on the screen with my own API data, now I already have the beginnings of the setup. So I just have to basically replace URLs and headers and things like that. And so every data-enabled screen that you add to your app, or every data-enabled screen that you duplicate as a new screen, will also make the data travel with it. So that's kind of a cool, important update. Other than that, I think it's just tweaks and fixes. So let's jump into Q&A. Who has questions? Don't be shy. Quiet crowd today. Questions, questions, questions. Okay. All right, well, I guess I'm gonna just continue my community build then. So last week, what I started doing was building a personal app to track different coffees that I tried. And so the core functionality was going to be the ability for me to input details about a new coffee that I tried and have them stored in an Airtable database. So that was all I wanted to accomplish at first. I think over time, what I would eventually want to see is maybe turning this into more of a community app where maybe a bunch of different people could upload their personalized coffees and scores and ratings and things like that, and we could interact with each other and share with one another and maybe have like a little bit of a news feed type of thing going. Not dissimilar from an app called Untapped, which I am also a heavy user of. And they do this for craft beer. So let's see if I can open this without it. So Untapped lets you check in and score and rate beers, and it lets you create friend lists. It lets you earn badges. It gives you special offers. It lets you say where you tried the beer or where you bought it from, so you can kind of geotag things. Lets you do a bunch of different things. Just stay here. Don't go to the Mac App Store. Okay. So this is what Untapped looks like. So I think the last Friday, where I got was I started setting up this form to run live preview on my phone. I always use live preview when I'm building. I never trust, even though it's really good, I try not to trust the Canvas preview. So I started setting up this form and naming my fields and things like that, and basically getting this ready to set up the submit actions to Airtable. So this is what my screen looks like on my app. Come on. So I have fields for naming the coffee and then picking the roast level and the type. And I wanted to figure out a way to give it a rating out of 5. And so that's where I was going to go next. Maybe I will build in Canvas preview. It seems like we have some issues with these picker components. So if I wanted to set up a rating functionality, what would I do? I guess I could just have like a radio button picker, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's see if that works. Maybe a slider. Interesting. All right, let's try a slider. Why not? Okay, so my slider is going to have minimum 1, maximum 5. You want to go in increments of 0.25. Okay. I'm trying to interact with this thing on my screen and I'm not having much success. somewhere. Why can't I? Oh, it's working here. Why isn't it working here? I don't know. It's working on my live or on my web preview, but it's not working on my live preview. That's kind of funny. Cool. I see your Q&A question, William. I'm gonna get to that in 1 second. So hold that thought. All right, well, I got this rating field. So I mean, it doesn't look terrible on my screen. It just doesn't, for some reason, does not want to be interacted with. Oh well, not a big deal. Figure that out later. Okay, so now I have the ability to name my coffee, pick different roast levels, and rate it. And then I just need to wire up. Maybe this is probably enough to do the submission. So what I'm doing right now is I'm just making sure that all of my capturing bugs. Bugs. It even works on the canvas. Sweet. It just doesn't work in live preview. So roast, type, and I should say rating. And then my text input is called name. The reason why I'm focusing on these field names is because they need to map exactly to my column headers and Airtable, otherwise I get errors. So let's go over to, oops, so we have name, we have rating, we have roast, we have type, we have some other things, but we're not going to worry about those right now. So the next thing I need to do is, we haven't done, actually, before I do that, let's get to some Q&A. What I'm going to do, just to forecast where I'm headed with my next set of steps, is we have this section in the Draftbit docs called integrations. And we don't have any direct integration spec. So this graphic, and if you ever get to this in Draftbit and you're confused by this does not mean Airtable is coming soon. We're going to fix that. What this means is that the direct integration with Airtable is coming soon. You can still add Airtable via REST API and do pretty much anything you want with Airtable. And that integration lives right here. So underneath integrations, go to REST API integrations, and then select Airtable with a bunch of other ones. Contentful, Sheety, Webflow CMS, Unsplash, WordPress.com CMS, Bubble CMS, Backendless, and we're adding more. But this is the guide to connect Airtable to your Draftbit app. So it's obviously more complex than just having a direct integration where you add your API key and then we automatically fetch all your fields and build your queries for you, but it's still possible. So don't be intimidated by this stuff. It's really easy to follow, and we'll do it together. But first I'm going to get to some Q&A. So William asks, this is kind of a long one. Love long questions. I have a table in my Airtable base, and I have a row that has linked data to another table. For example, I have a classes table, and I have a class, and I have a teacher, say Mr. Nick assigned to it, but that is linked to another record in another table, teachers, with information such as the other classes they teach, as well as upcoming classes from them. How do I make it such that I can have it go into a detail view for that teacher from one of their classes, similar to looking at a journalist's other news stories? Okay, I'm following. Trying all day to get to work when filtering classes by day that I've given up and create another row with the day name as in the text field. I don't get the class name and time when I start the day name. And link to another field record, there's an ID. Okay, so there's a couple of things here. One is if you have a list of classes and then you click on a class name to see that class's detail view, and every class has a teacher, how could I then make it an interaction that navigates me once I click on the teacher's name to show me a list of all of the teacher's classes? So I think that's the first question, correct? And then the second question, it looks like there's some difficulty filtering classes by day. And then also some issues, it sounds like, with sorting class names and times by sorting by the day name. Oh, you said sorting, but I think you mean filtering. Don't get the class names and times when I try to filter by the day name. When I mention another tables record, just an ID. All right, so you tell me, William, would you rather, we can do this live in your app if you'll give me access. Otherwise, I can try and answer the question with my app. Cool, so can you send me a link to, I need a couple of things. One is the URL of your Draftbit app. And the other is if you could just invite Nick at draftbit.com to your Airtable base, and we'll take a look. You can DM it to me, by the way, if you filter this chat by just sending it to panelists if you don't want anyone else to see. Um, all right, so I haven't done a lot of work with Airtable, but I'm going to try a few things that I think might work. So you have days, which is, I think, probably a good table to have if this concept of Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday is like sort of a constant thing throughout your app. I think that's fine. Subjects. So these are like categories of classes, basically. And then periods, which look like, interesting. I see what you did here. So I think this is right, by the way, having classes being categorized into days based on what I know about the interaction you're trying to create. I think that's fine. Something that so there's a couple of things that I might do here. One is, I think if we do a roll up, oh, I don't have the ability to add columns and stuff. What I might suggest doing, no, actually you have this here. So one thing that I would do is I would definitely have, I don't know that Airtable is smart enough to sort these things by like earliest to latest. So if you were trying to create a view that showed you all of your classes in order of first period, second period, third period, I don't know if sorting this, I guess Airtable is smart enough to sort. But I don't know if that you're going to call, what I would basically do is I would create another view in this base called something like, you know, classes sorted or something like that. And then you could, in your query, tell the query to look at that specific view in Airtable, which is something that's kind of cool and unique to Airtable, as opposed to trying to use the like query variables or query parameters, rather to say like sort by period one ascending. I don't know if the query, I know Airtable seems smart enough to sort these things soonest to latest, but I don't know if the query will be smart enough to do sorting the way you want to see it. So the way you would do that is you would create a new view called like period sorted, and you have a field. You would sort by so this is a period one sorted table, and then you would tell your query to look at this Airtable view as opposed to your unsorted view. I think that should resolve sorting issues, but let me know if it doesn't. The next thing is just rereading the question here. All right, so we want a detail view for teachers. Okay, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't see like teachers in this table and stuff yet. So maybe we can kind of fake out this example with, I'm gonna actually go back let's try this with example data just to kind of fake it out. And then later we can go back and look at your, we can help you with your Airtable, because I'm actually not, I'm not great with querying Airtable yet. So I might be able to help you better. What is I think we have a books, authors. Oh, look at that. Our product hunt button is broken. That's funny. Screenshot of that. Thanks, product hunt. Appreciate you guys changing the HTML code for that. All right, so we have, I'm just looking at what resources are available. So we have restaurants, restaurant photos, properties. I'm looking for something that we could use to kind of fake out. Oh, I think orgs and people would be an easier one to do. Ooh, I have a better idea. We have this app called BookBit in the sample apps. Let's just start with it. If memory serves me correctly, I think that I know that we have books and we have authors, but I'm not positive that I'm not positive that our books and authors like data sets talk to one another, but I do know that orgs and people works. So what I'm going to do is a couple of steps here. First is I'm going to go use the BookBit app because it already has the screen set up. So I don't have to think about designing new screens to do this interaction. Maybe this will end up biting us because I'll have too much crap here, but I'm going to change this to orgs and people. So we're going to start with discover books. I'm going to change that to discover people. And then you're going to orgs and people with like a many to many thing, or is it a many to one? Let's assume, I don't know if this is true, but let's assume that there are many people and many orgs, but people can only belong to one organization, which is the same thing as saying that organizations, there's for every person view, there's only going to be one organization. So I would first display a list of people in my app. And when I click on a person to see that person's profile page, I would show an org. And then what I would want to do is I would want to click on an org and show that org's list of people. So let's see if we can make that happen. So right now, I'm actually just going to delete. This section doesn't really do much for me, so I'm just going to delete it. I really just want one list here. So let's do this. So here is now I have a list of books. I'm going to change that to be a list of people. So get newly added books, and then change that endpoint to be people. I don't necessarily recommend that you kind of try and Frankenstein endpoints together, like I'm doing, to sort of swap things out. It would be better to just create brand new service and brand new endpoints, but I'm just, for the sake of like doing this quickly. So the image would be the avatar, and the text would be the name. And so now I have a list of people. And the next thing I need to do is fix this touchable. Really touchable. Whoops, I'm in the wrong tab. Oh man, what did that mean? So we want a navigation action to this screen. I'll change the screen name later. And we're going to pass the ID of the person. So that makes sense. Let's go to, let's change the screen name. Okay. So now let's go to the screen. So now we need to swap out this endpoint. So we're going to change this fetch to, right now it's called get book of the day. Those should be get book item. Let's see how. Yeah. Let's put a more fun value. So now the image is their avatar again. And this text can be their name. Why don't we change this? Why don't we just make this their org name, which actually needs to be a separate fetch. I'm gonna set that up last, and let's just delete the rest of this stuff so we don't need it. Okay. So I need to set up a new query to fetch this person's org name by their org ID. So I'm going to stumble around a little bit, but let's talk through it. So get another fetch component, text inside it. And now I need to pass in the org ID of the person and return the name of the organization. So let's create a new. And then this becomes the name. Come on. Okay, I did something wrong here, so let me think it through. So I'm passing in okay. I think I know what I did wrong, but I need to go back to the previous screen. So I passed the ID. I'm pretty confident that if I was a better developer, I would somehow be able to grab the ID of the record that's displayed on the screen, which is Frankie's user record, and then basically look up her org ID and pass it to this second fetch query to display the org name. But I'm not a good enough developer to do that. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass her org ID from the initial screen as a second navigation parameter. So ID is her ID, her record ID, and then I'm going to also pass the org ID. Okay. And then I'm going to come back to this screen. And I'm going to go and look at my query real quick. All right, so now instead I'm fetching the org ID from the, yeah, okay. So now this is working. So now what I've got is I've got Frankie's name and then the name of her organization underneath it. So now the next thing I need to do is create another touchable. Oops. So now when I click on this name, Let's see if this works. Actually, be amazed if I can get this right the first time. So I want to navigate. I'm just going to navigate back to that list of people screen. And I'm going to pass org ID, which is the ID of the organization. I'm not going to use the navigation parameters because I don't want to create these like circular references in the app. I'm going to use the ID of the org. Okay. And I'm going to actually just call this. All right. So the initial fetch is accepting a query parameter called oops. Oh no. No. Okay. So this query is not accepting a query parameter. So I'm trying to think. All right, I'm going to do something different instead. I'm going to duplicate this screen. So this is the discover. So this will be like the initial screen. I'm just going to duplicate this screen. I'm going to call this screen. It's not the screen I want to duplicate. Why would you do that? We're getting really close, so just bear with me. We got 10 minutes left in office hours. I'm going to call this screen list of people. And then I'm going to create a new endpoint based on this people. Okay, let me think about this for a second. What is the syntax? I just got to remember what the syntax is. This section, again, if I was a better developer, I would probably do something like this. But what I'm trying to just do is return a list of people who match the org ID. Some people question mark org equals and the query parameter. Let's just see if this works. So I should get back a list of people only who have org ID 6, 6, 6. Okay, so my syntax is right. It's only, I'm gonna just, and minute equals 5. Just in case we return like 100% list by accident. All right, so now this fetch becomes get list of people in org. And now let me go back to my person profile screen and finish configuring this navigate action. So I'm going to navigate to the list of people, and I'm going to pass the ID of the organization as org ID. Okay. And go to this. We're going to select org ID as a navigation parameter. Okay, that worked. Getting excited. And maybe just for fun, I'm going to just reuse my endpoint, even though this is all right, let's test this out. Of course. Okay. Slide preview instead. All right, so I'm on my Discover People. Let's go to Costanza Fahey. Click on him. Okay, so that worked. Now I'm showing him. Now if I click on AccuPrint, now I've got AccuPrint's list of people. And I should be able to just keep going in circles here. Oh, technically I can't because now they all belong to AccuPrint. But if I go to do somebody else, let's try her. She works for, what does that say? Ecosport.com. Click on that. There's Ecosport's list of people, limit 5. You can keep going back. Okay, so that worked. So what did we do? We started with a list of people. We created the navigate to an item view interaction by passing, I hacked this by passing both the individual item ID of the person, but I also passed their org ID to the screen because I wasn't quite sure how to fetch that org ID once I was in their screen. And then I displayed, I fetched data from a different endpoint, orgs, using that past org ID navigation parameter. And then I created the interaction to navigate to a different list screen that accepted the org ID as a past navigation parameter. And so if I was feeling really clever, what I would probably do is something like, maybe I could have different tabs set up in this app for like, I could start on the discover, I could have a discover screen and then a, you know, another screen that maybe said like list, you know, org lists, and maybe you have to select the org first and then it shows the list. You could do different, there's different ways to like, to do this, but at a high level, like this worked. And so to circle back, William, to your question of how would I set this up? It's something like what we just did here. So this recording will be available for you to reference back if you want to do it with example data first. But then you basically just have to mimic the same UX with your Airtable endpoints. So you would have, you know, your list of classes, and then you would go to an individual class, you would show the teacher name of that class, and then you would create the navigate action that when you selected that teacher's name, you would then show a list of that teacher's classes, passing the teacher ID as the navigation parameter. So hopefully that answered your question. I just have one more minute here. I have to hard stop at 11:30 because I have another meeting, but hopefully that was helpful. Cool. Anything else in the last 30 seconds here? I'm going to stop sharing here. I'm going to stop the recording. I'm going to stop the live stream.